Hello everyone, yes it is Mixing Wednesdays and this is the first of 3 videos. Again, I'm giving you 3 videos today. How lucky are you guys, okay, in the grand scheme of plugin shootouts. So today I'm doing a video that I've been harping on about for ages, but other new plugins have came in and taken my attention away. But today I'm finally doing a shootout of OVERLOUD plugin. Basically I'm going to be looking at the Gem series, which is what everybody's been telling me to look at. So they do have a Gem series, which is basically like a series of plugins, okay? So what we are going to be doing is we're going to be doing the Neve emulation first, and I'm shooting that out against the Lindell 80 channel, which is my favourite Neve emulation of all time. So let's get straight to it. Now for this one, I thought, no, what could I do it on? I quite like Neves for low end and I quite like them on bass. So I thought, no, what, let's do a shootout on bass. So that was pretty obvious, wasn't it? Obviously I was going to be able to tell the difference because it's absolutely night and day. So in terms of the Neve emulation, it's definitely perceptive. I prefer the cleanliness of the Lindell and I prefer the low end. I think the OVERLOUD does have better mid-range. I do think you can kind of crank that mid-range a little bit more, but I think it kind of lacks in the lows and I don't like the saturation. I don't know, I'd need to try it out in a mix. I think maybe that saturation could help, but I just think it's like this kind of like hum to me, and it didn't even have like the preamp dialed that much, so I'm a little bit unsure. So on this one I would say I probably sway more towards the Lindell on this one, but still very good plugin. Now OVERLOUD have brought out a LA2A and LA3 plugin all in one. This one here is the one that I was really excited to try out, because there isn't many plugins that give you an LA2 and an LA3A together, okay? Now let's look at the LA3A first. Now in terms of the LA3A, I only really use it on 2 sources. It would be on guitars. Now acoustic guitar and electric guitar. So what we're going to be doing we're going to be doing a shootout of the LA3A of the Gem, and we're also going to be doing the CLA3A on acoustic guitars. Let's see how we got on. Of course I got it right. Of course I got it right. There was a little bit at the start though, but you have to listen a little bit closer than what I thought. But we got to a point, as soon as I kind of had the clarity, and then I got a little bit more on the low end, it was like it all kind of fell in together. So in terms of LA3As, I actually don't know of any other emulations. The CLA3A was the one I've always used. I really liked it. I like the OVERLOUD better. Would I purchase the OVERLOUD as an LA3A? Yes, I would. So, OVERLOUD wins on this one. So next, let's do its big brother, and let's do the big one. Let's do the LA2A, okay? So in terms of the LA2A, I don't have another LA. I don't have the waves because I just don't like it. I just don't like it. It's not that good to me, okay? Now, I do have the Opticom XLA3, which, yes, it is emulating an LA2A. If you go on the website, they'll tell you it's emulating an LA2A, okay? Two vocals with the Plugin Alliance Opticom XLA3A versus the LA2A of the OVERLOUD Gem.
For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships. For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships. For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships. For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships.
Right, so second time round, I was struggling. The first time I could hear it, then second time, again, perceptual listening. I think at the time I was listening kind of more for the clarity. But the thing is, the XLA3 still has clarity and they're still a very good compressor. But the more you listen and the longer you listen, the differences kind of start to kind of just come together a little bit. So the second time around, I did struggle, and again, I was kind of teetering. But I was like, right, no, I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. I did get them right, so the difference is there, and there is more clarity, and it comes in a little bit kind of more focally to you, okay? So I think it's got a little bit more kind of low end as well in the OVERLOUD. So I would say that 3 out of 3 I was able to do it, but it did require a lot of critical listening, which tells me that they are very, very, very similar. So would you be able to tell the difference in a mix? I'll leave that up to you. I would say for my ears, I think that the LA2A of the OVERLOUD is better, and it is clearer, and it is kind of more akin to what I like to use in the forms of, say, an MGUC or an L-Ray. Now, let's do the Fairchild. The really good thing about OVERLOUD is that there's 3 different Fairchilds, and this really, I understood why everybody was telling me about this. Now, London on the left, okay, it's kind of the most saturated, and it kind of reminds me like of an MGUC emulation, which the reason I don't like the Fairchild emulation that the MGUC has is it's kind of got this kind of, I don't know, it's like kind of muffled and a little bit kind of distorted. It's just got a little bit too much saturation for me, and it isn't very clear. Now, the one that's in the middle is basically just a little bit more clearer than the London, but still a little bit saturated. And then you've got the end one, which I'm pretty sure is the LA. I might be wrong, I'm pretty sure it's the LA. And the LA is the clearest one to me, which is what I like a Fairchild to do. So in this shootout, I have decided to do the LA because I do, for vocal buses and vocals, I do use the ultramarine, which in my opinion is the best Fairchild I've heard on a vocal bus. I love the warmth, the glue, and the kind of focal focus that it gives you. Okay, so let's try a little shootout side by side of the LA, I'm pretty sure it's LA, the LA setting of the Overloud versus the Ultramarine.
For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships. For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships. For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships. For I've been living in scenes from Harold and Maude, faking gruesome deaths, offending Catholic priests. So send this boy away, forsake him at your peril. There can only be one loser. I never knew why. We were only passing ships.
Right, so 2 blind tests, and I was able to tell the difference, okay? But I'd say the second time around, I kind of knew what the differences were. The LA2A one was really, really difficult for me. But this one, it's still very, very close, okay? What I would say is, if you were telling me, Paul, which one would you buy? For me, I want clarity and I want warmth and glue on a vocal bus. So I would still go with the Ultramarine because I like it. But in terms of value for money, and still quality as well, 3 different compressors in one, I would have to say for you guys, I'd probably buy the Overloud, but try both of them out, okay? And last up, we are going to do the SSL bus compressor. Now this is going to be quite an interesting one for me, because I've never heard many people actually go on about the Overloud SSL bus compressor. So yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting. So we're going to do the Townhouse versus the Gem Overloud G BUS compressor, whatever it's called, okay? So let's do side by side. there you go. Ah, like kind of it was halfway through the song, as when it was kind of building up and the compressor was kind of hitting a little bit harder. It's kind of when I kind of was starting to pick up those differences. But as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, I could hear it, especially when it kind of breaks down and it's kind of just like you're hearing the kick more. I could definitely hear the kick punching and the cymbals are definitely more clear. So for me, I would definitely say if you're looking for an SSL bus compressor, that's definitely one to check out. The Overloud is probably one of the best that I've tried yet, and I actually would use it over the Townhouse. I do like the low end and I actually prefer the highs. The Townhouse does have a little bit more width. That's what I'm picking up in my ear. So I don't know, the Townhouse is a little bit smeary, where I think the Overloud is a little bit clearer. So we'll finish that there. Overloud, I have finally done it. So if there was one question you guys would probably ask me, it would be, Paul, out of all these plugins, which ones would you buy? Okay, so I wouldn't buy the Neve. It's not for me. I think I've had a few days to think about it, and I'm just like, nah, it's not for me. I like what I like. I like the cleanliness, and I don't really like that saturation kind of hum thing that's going on with the Overloud. So Neve wouldn't be for me, but it might be for you. Basically, the LE2A, LE3A plugin, to me that's an absolute bargain, right? To get probably the best LE2A and the best LE3A on the market, and to have them in one plugin and one click of a button is unbelievable. It's so quick. The two of them sound amazing. To me, that's probably the gem, absolute gem. I didn't even realise the pun in that. Yes, the absolute gem of this kind of shootout to me was LE2, LE3. I think it's value for money and the quality is definitely there, and I would definitely purchase this plugin. In terms of Fairchild, I've got an ultramarine, I've got a Fairchild. I don't need it. I wouldn't buy it. If I was looking for a Fairchild plugin, I probably would buy the Overloud. If I didn't have the ultramarine and I didn't have the Fairchild, I probably would buy the Overloud because I think it's more value for money. And then lastly, I think I have to say I would buy the Overloud SSL Bus Comp. I did prefer it over the Townhouse. So that's quite a good review for Overloud, isn't it? I would say. Again, there hasn't been much negativity at all. I don't think they make bad plugins. I think all the plugins sound amazing. Again, very, very high quality. To be able to create such high quality algorithmic plugins with such low CPU. Honestly, the only plugins I find that have a low CPU like that is like Waves. So again, it is another kind of dig to Waves, because everybody goes, but Paul, it's like Waves is really good for workflow and CPU. If you're looking for CPU and high quality plugins, getting into the Overloud series is definitely something to think about. I mean, even I'm thinking about it because I'm just like, as much as I love acustica, CPU and freezing tracks, it is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. You're talking like maybe 1 to 2, 3% like a plugin, and you're getting like comparable or sometimes better audio quality than other plugins.